Very fortunate to introduce our first panel of the day and moderator. So our moderator today is Sarah Faust. She will be leading a discussion on OneWater. This is a project that Hill Country Alliance and the National Wildlife Federation have been working on for over a year now. So we're very excited to be debuting our OneWater Guidebook for the Texas Hill Country here at the summit today. So please join me in welcoming Sarah and our next panel of speakers.
Thank you, Sydney. It's such an honor to be speaking at the Hill Country Alliance Summit. I really appreciate all of your time and this opportunity. So we're actually going to start this presentation with a short video about the first OneWater school in Texas, which is the Blue Hole Primary School in Wimberley, Texas. And there's no sound. This is not something I'm going to be able to fix. So.
Grade GT class is going to explain to you exactly how this system works here at Blue Hole. So excited to see this.
Holds 10,000 gallons of water. The water in the tank is rainwater. The water in the tank in front of the Blue Hole Primary is used to water the grass and trees in front of the building. The gutters right over there bring the water into the tank.
This is about our limestone blocks. Our drinking water comes from the underground water. Rain helps recharge our water supply, like this. See how it sinks in?
Pervious and impervious. Pervious allows water to sink in. Impervious just rolls off the side. We have pervious and impervious on the sidewalks when you walk in. Now I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to pour this water and it sinks in. And on this side, when I pour it, it just runs down, doesn't sink in. And so that side is called impervious. That's impervious because it just rolls off and now it sinks in to the aquifer.
The vegetative filter strip slows down stormwater. It helps allow water to sink in. It also slows down erosion. It stops bad things before they go into the groundwater. It also helps less flooding. See how there is not that many curbs in this parking lot like this one? That's because the parking lot is in an angle so the rainwater can go into the grass and sink in.
Thanks so much to those kids for demonstrating the results of OneWater planning using a project we're going to discuss today. The school is one of several projects featured in the new guidebook that we discussed is just released by Hill Country Alliance and National Wildlife Federation titled OneWater in the Texas Hill Country, Connecting Communities with Projects and Professionals. So we want to give an overview of the OneWater concept as presented in the book and have a discussion with some practitioners about implementing OneWater. OneWater is an integrated approach to water management.
It is so
where rather than managing water in separate silos of drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, each to be dealt with on their own, we think of all water as potential supply for an appropriate use. As the kids in the video demonstrated, rainwater, stormwater, wastewater, and even AC condensate are all water supply and can be utilized for economic, environmental, and community benefits. By managing finite water resources as one, we can envision a future with long-term resilience and reliability. In a lot of ways, OneWater is revisiting traditional resource conservation that was practiced by ranchers, farmers, and others long before urban infrastructure, but in an updated way for our modern water needs. With dramatic increases in water demand from population growth, the Hill Country needs to make the most of every drop, regardless of where it's been before. The opportunity is to use this concept as a planning tool to address growth while honoring the natural landscapes, pristine rivers, and springs that make this region so unique. Because every aspect of development involves water, this concept of integrated management can be applied at all different scales, from individual building sites to campuses, agricultural and ranching enterprises to city and regional plans. While integrated management through green infrastructure, reuse, aquifer storage, and other concepts are really exciting opportunities to a lot of us, these can also be daunting to implement. People are used to building in the traditional model where wastewater is piped far away for treatment and stormwater rushes off-site, causing erosion and pollution downstream. There can be fear of the unknown and pressure on local engineers and elected officials not to push for moving too far away from the methods people are more used to. It can also simply be hard to connect with a consultant or engineer with the expertise that your community really needs. So in researching the book, we interviewed water resource professionals and we asked them, what are the benefits and challenges to implementing these integrated supply ideas? And what are the keys to success? So the book gives you their responses and 14 examples of OneWater projects that have been implemented here in the Hill Country. We also profile water resource professionals and provide their contact information so that all of you can tap their knowledge and skills. So it's really exciting that Hill Country Alliance and National Wildlife Federation produced this book because they're really thinking about how to connect Hill Country leaders to the people with the knowledge and experience needed to guide innovative OneWater projects to reality. So in order to explore all of this more, we're going to visit with our panel. Robin Gary is the executive director of the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, which was a key stakeholder in the Blue Hole Primary School project. Stephanie Moore is a hydrogeologist with Intera, and she's been involved with the New Braunfels Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. Troy Dorman of Halff & Associates is a civil and environmental engineer. Troy's featured in the book and will speak to us about the City of Boerne Integrated Stormwater Management Ordinance. So I'm going to try to move over to these lovely chairs. So Troy.
Yes, ma'am.
As I just mentioned, you worked on the City of Boerne Integrated Stormwater Management Ordinance,
yes,
which seeks to manage stormwater across the city with the goal of achieving better flood protection and water quality protection. So could you describe some of the basic features of this ordinance and tell us about some of the challenges to bringing an ordinance like this to adoption?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the basic features of the overall ordinance was to truly integrate stormwater management, and that's from flood control all the way through water quality and even water supply and infiltration. So the basic features are improved floodplain management, actually increasing the requirements so that we don't put new infrastructure and houses in the floodplain. Looking at stream protection, right? Our riparian corridors, there was a great presentation earlier about how important Hill Country springs are, or streams are, and the springs that come out of them. So protecting those streams. Detention as a requirement so that all new development has to manage the stormwater that comes off the site, and then adding in that low impact development component. And that low impact development component has two real important drivers. One is water supply. So in the Hill Country, most of our water comes from groundwater, which is infiltrated in our stream corridors, right? So we've got to be able to slow that water down and allow it to soak in. But the second part, and I was glad to hear the first presenter talk about that $2 billion of future cost to repair our streams. Well, the other big part of this ordinance was to protect the city of Boerne's fiscal sustainability down the road so that the streams aren't blowing out, that they're not losing bridges and houses that they're having to go back and repair. So all that came together to really create a code that sets Boerne up long term to be fiscally sustainable as a community and environmentally sustainable.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. What can I ask about the timeline for drafting and adopting the ordinance?
So it was relatively quick. If you look at when we started to when it actually finished, it was 6 months. But the city had already started a process of developing a UDC, a Unified Development Code, that actually had come out of a comprehensive plan that had been done a few years earlier. So in the midst of all that, we came in, did some quick updates, wrote a new LID code, put all those components in, and got it adopted. The UDC actually was adopted about 12 months later.
So the ordinance is the sort of the final step from the planning that began a few
That
years
is
ago.
actually correct. A lot of the goals that were incorporated into the ordinance came out of that initial planning effort that was done to set Bernie up for how they wanted to, develop out and how they wanted to see the community be preserve certain features.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie, we're going to hear from you a little bit about the New Braunfels Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. So this is a utility-scale water supply project that augments the city's water needs. And so can you tell us about how it works and why New Braunfels wanted to pursue this project?
Sure. So aquifer storage and recovery, I just want to start by mentioning that that's really one component of a larger process or technology referred to as managed aquifer recharge, which runs the full gamut from low technology like harvesting rainwater all the way over a large scale to the more high-tech components like aquifer storage and recovery. And basically what that is using nature's infrastructure, the existing aquifer, to store water for a not-so-rainy day, right? So the city of New Braunfels has a very diverse water portfolio that includes some groundwater and surface water from a variety of sources. But when we're in a drought situation, their surface water rights are drastically limited, and even their groundwater rights, their ability to withdraw is limited. So what they want to do is take water during the rainy seasons and store it somewhere, and instead of building a reservoir, what they're going to do is take advantage of the nature's infrastructure, right, an aquifer, and store that water underground. So they're literally, I've got to use hand, okay, let's pretend that the microphone is a well. They're going to put the water in and create a bubble, and then later they'll pull that water out. So it's basically just creating a little bubble, well, actually a big bubble is the goal, but in the ground to store the water for a not-so-rainy day.
So the New Braunfels project, as I understand it, is large, and they're a city seeing rapid growth, which a lot of the hill country communities are. In communities where they don't need quite such a large volume, is this a technique that could still work? And how could municipal leaders or stakeholders who are thinking in their community, we need more integrated supply, we could do more with what's running off, what are steps they could take to understand their options?
That's a great question. And so first, I want to say that ASR is a great technique if you have the appropriate hydrogeologic conditions, but it is not a silver bullet. It will not work everywhere, and anybody that tells you that it will, I would be suspect of that assertion. So the first thing is to look into the study, read about it. The One Water Guidebook that you guys have produced is a great resource. The Texas Water Development Board has also recently published a great resource on aquifer storage and recovery, and I can provide that link to anybody that's interested. So, ask around, talk to the practitioners, talk to the communities that have implemented recharge, and then go from there. Because it's a pretty big process, but it is possible to implement on a large utility scale, but also on a very small scale. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it on a ranch land scale. So there's a variety of techniques that can be tailored to your specific needs.
One of the things I've been learning about some of these integrated water supply management projects is that since some of them are innovative, the permitting and the timeline takes longer than something that's been done again and again over decades. I think that the TCEQ recently passed some rules and has finalized an ASR application, but do you find that what kind of timeline do people need to consider when they're looking? Because you mentioned it doesn't work everywhere, so how does that planning look?
So that's a great question. And just like these, doing business as usual, sticking with the status quo is easy because that's the way we've always done it and we all know how to do it. But still, that shouldn't be, that shouldn't prevent us from looking for unusual situations and investing the time up front to permit these things. TCEQ has been very progressive, I think, because of the recent interest in ASR across the state and in our legislature. There have been laws that are changing rapidly just in our most recent legislative session, and TCEQ has been rapidly responding to updating the rules to work with the communities that are trying to implement these practices. And they're also being very forward-thinking. In many cases, it's easy to say, well, we want to find people that have only done it in this area and in Texas. But if you're trying to implement something new, you really, it suits us well to look beyond our borders and to talk to other people that have done these things and to see what we can learn from them. So all of the people in the state that are working on these projects, I think, are doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. So Robin is here to speak with us about the Blue Hole Primary School, and we didn't get to play the whole video. There are more adorable kids talking about more exciting features, and then at the end, Robin's in the video. So thank you for putting that together and allowing us to share it. So Robin's actually here not as an engineer, but as a community stakeholder. And Wimberley Valley Watershed was a really important stakeholder in the development of the Blue Hole Primary School. One of the aspects of OneWater that I really value, and I didn't get to talk about in the presentation, is that it puts stakeholder input at the heart of the process. It's not about deciding what you're going to do and then going out and telling people why it's so great. It's about figuring out what your community values are and incorporating that into your water management plans. So Robin, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the co-benefits or values beyond just water quality that were achieved with this school and how those reflect the community values in Wimberley?
Absolutely. This project is incredible because it has so many wins. The planning decision and the investment that the Board of Trustees made really has ramifications beyond just the school district itself or the students. Certainly the students win because they are immersed in STEM. They see science, technology, engineering, and math in practice every day. When it rains, it's really exciting because they can go see the rain tube in the library thundering because it's raining right through the library. So it's a huge win for them. They get to see it in practice. The school has utility, the cost of operating the Blue Hole Primary compared to a traditional campus like Jacobs Well Elementary is far less. The utility bills themselves are a fourth of what Jacobs Well Elementary pays, which is amazing. And for the community, the water benefit, the water savings is priceless because we are a groundwater community in Wimberley. Our economy is tied to the beauty that springs and creeks provide for the area. Also, that's what we drink. I drink Middle Trinity Aquifer water. I shower in Middle Trinity Aquifer water. Middle Trinity Aquifer water is what comes out at Jacobs Well. So preserving that and leaving as much in the aquifer really provides that benefit for the ecosystem and for the tourism, the economy of the area, and then the water supply for the community. And society wins because this is the first OneWater school where we're really flaunting all of the science, technology, engineering, and math that goes into it, admitting that it's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than the status quo or business as usual.
Thank you. When Robin was talking, I was thinking about, another of the things that's sort of different to me about this sort of OneWater framework is when she talked about it raining in the library and they can see it. Kind of throughout all of the projects, we give an example of in the book, with the exception of maybe ASR because it is still underground. The green infrastructure, the different ways of handling stormwater, creating a park out of an area that can also provide water quality benefits. It brings our use and our treatment and our need to value our water to the forefront of the public and really allows for so many educational and interactive opportunities. For so long, our development's been shoving it underground and out of sight, until it comes out of the tap. And so that's one of the things that really attracted me learning more about this concept, and one of the things hopefully you can see in the descriptions in the book. And obviously the school and the children learning about it. I mean, I love that they're growing up thinking about these things constantly and seeing the science and math in action. So Troy, I wanted to ask you, all of the professionals that were featured in this book were basically, we found them through personal recommendations from stakeholders, from city leaders, from people doing this work, and who did they see as having done something innovative and important. And so I wanted and that's how we found you and learned more about what you were doing. Can you share with us some lessons learned you've experienced that you could share with communities who are seeing a lot of new development and thinking they need to take a more proactive approach that will give them the water future they're looking for?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is at the beginning, a community needs to understand really what its goals are. We're not going to stop growth, right? We just need smart growth. We need to do it in a way that's different, right? That is smarter down the road. And then start with that. Understand your goals, and then try to find somebody that has gone through the process and who brings an interdisciplinary approach. There is no one discipline. I'm an engineer, yes, but I work with planners, I work with ecologists, I work with a lot of different disciplines to bring all of those stakeholder and city goals together into an overall ordinance that meets those goals. So that's the biggest thing. Secondly, anytime you're changing something that's been the way it's been done for a long time, it's going to take time. Just expect to be in it for the long haul. I said 6 months earlier was the ordinance. I've been working with the city of Boerne through different measures for probably 7 or 8 years to get to this point. And it just takes time. There's a lot of education, a lot of outreach. Make sure that you've got all that built in. You need time for people to digest the new and be able to understand how, yes, they can adapt to it, they can incorporate it, but what it's going to mean for their business and for their home and for their school. And if you can sell them, right, on a quarter of the utilities or less infrastructure maintenance costs down the road or less cost to the city down the road, usually you'll get the message across to the decision makers, who's really the key at the end of the day, and then they can get behind why it's important for their community.
Thank you. Stephanie, likewise, I'd like to ask you some advice you have from experiences you've gone through for communities that are looking to implement a One Water project and take a different approach than more traditional water supply.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said, and I think we're going to have to borrow some of those kids. Maybe they could get in some videos for ASR. But education, and I'm only halfway joking because it's really true. I mean, how many adults know the difference between pervious and impervious? Everybody, notwithstanding everybody in this room does, but there are a lot of people, right, that don't know where their water comes from and don't know why impervious or pervious surfaces matter. So I think. And big kudos to NBU for thinking in advance and looking outside the way things have always been done. They knew they had a problem, and they had to ask around and look around. And even Texas had started ages ago looking into ASR. So talk to people that have done it, and keep asking questions and have faith in the process. There's a lot of ways that we can learn from each other and get kids in your video.
Thanks. Robin, any words you have for advice for community stakeholders where maybe you're seeing some decisions go in a way the wrong direction, and what you can do to be involved?
Well, I think that it all starts with water awareness and including people in science. Science isn't something that only engineers and practitioners do. It's something that it permeates our entire lives. And I think the more people are included in that science, the more early conversations we can have with the stakeholders that make the decisions. In the video, the president of the Board of Trustees, Child, is in that video. One of the hardest people to convince that this was a good idea was the superintendent. He is the biggest advocate for it now. I think that those early conversations, those small touches, really, really make a big difference. And I think it's everyone looking for ways to innovate. For instance, where are the rain gutters on this building? It would be awesome, right? You
We'll
could
get that
flush a
next
lot
year.
of toilets with the rainwater collected off this building. The AC condensate wouldn't work, but here, rainwater would. And so it's identifying what's missing, and all of you guys have that ability throughout the communities in the Hill Country to really have those early conversations and look for that innovation. Because it makes a big difference. And stay tuned, we'll have a case study for the One Water School to crunch the numbers so that you can refer to it and learn from it. It's not perfect, but it's awesome. And everything should be explained by second graders.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panel. Unfortunately, I thought we had 5 minutes left for questions, but the sign that's getting waved at me is not. We can take one question. Okay, do we have one question?
One good question.
Brian, do you want to just holler it out?
I think I've got a good enough voice. I'm Brian with St. Martin Creek Association. First of all, welcome to the Martin Creek Watershed. I just wanted to really highlight these 3 projects that these people worked on are real models for all of the Hill Country, and you really, really should pay attention to them and read up on them. The Bernie ordinance, particularly in its use of low-impact development, aka green stormwater infrastructure, is one of the most progressive in the state. The One Water School, I think that's one of the first projects I've seen that has used all of those elements in one building. And ASR is like an older technique, but it's one that actually needs to be used more. There was a question about whether or not it was suitable for small communities. I know that Kerrville has had ASR for about 30 years, according to the head of their system, who I talked at the HTA summit 3 or 4 years ago. So once again, really pay attention to these projects, because these are models that can be applied not just in larger towns, larger cities, but in small towns throughout the whole country.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that the panelists are going to be here and they are available to answer other questions you have. Please pick up a copy of the guidebook. It's in the back, and I personally visited with everybody that's featured in the book, and they would love it if you would call them or email them with your questions. That was really important to everyone. The whole purpose really is to connect all of you with these professionals. I also wanted to mention you got a postcard on your table at the break, and that has a link to another book that the National Wildlife Federation put out that has a lot more information on One Water and how to protect healthy waterways, environmental concerns with keeping water on site. And I found that book to have a lot of really good information about the stakeholder process within One Water. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Great job.